The government of Quebec recently presented Bill 96, which includes some pretty important changes to its language laws. Now, this is the first of 2 episodes where we look at the proposed changes and the potential consequences that they'll have on English-speaking and minority communities throughout the province of Quebec. Hi there, my name is Humphrey and welcome to About Townshippers. This is where we talk about the organizations, the events, and the topics that are important to English speakers living in Quebec's eastern townships. As an English speaker and as president of Townshippers Association, Gerald Cutting has become quite familiar with the laws, the policies, and the programs that affect, both negatively and positively, English-speaking and minority communities in eastern townships and actually throughout the entire province of Quebec. Now, we recently sat down to talk about his views and his concerns surrounding this new Bill 96. Here's our chat. Well, good morning, Gerry, and welcome to About Townshippers.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Ed.
Well, Gerry, we've been hearing this on the news. It's been on social media, all throughout the newspapers. The provincial government has just presented some pretty important reform to the province's language laws. And they say it's to reinforce and to strengthen the French language throughout Quebec. Now, understandably, this is going to have some repercussions on, English speakers and minorities throughout the entire province. It's going to be affecting businesses and cégeps, and it's going to be affecting newcomers. Now, you've probably, I take for granted, you saw this coming for a while. Now, as someone that's been working for language and minority rights for quite some time now, what's your gut reaction to this?
Well, as I said in the 8 interviews that I had to do on the day that the bill was tabled, the bill knocked the wind right out of me. So let me tell you why. I know it's symbolic. Is that if you first of all look at the bill, there were essentially 3 elements that hit me very hard. Number one is that the bill in itself declares that the notwithstanding clause is going to be used. This is a clear indication then that there has been a lot of work done in studying what is the actual content of the bill. And the notwithstanding clause, for everyone's benefit, we have to understand, it sets aside the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, both at the federal and provincial level. This is an action that's taken only with a great deal of measure. And what it does signal then is that why would you want to pass a law to strengthen the French language and then declare right up front there will be no access to court challenges for the minorities that it may target, either directly or indirectly? That I think is a big issue. Second issue that hit me, which is one that again goes way beyond just a bill that would address the needs to strengthen and to protect the French language. And I think everyone who's in the English community can agree with that, can share it. And after all, Quebec is our chez nous also. And most of us are bilingual and get along just great with our friends and neighbors. But what we see here is that the province unilaterally will rewrite the Constitution to indicate within the Constitution that Quebec is a separate nation and that French is the only official language of this nation. What we have here is something that in a certain sense has already been agreed to, but it's then there in order to modify the Constitution of Canada. And the Constitution of Canada is very clear. It says there are 2 official languages. If the province can unilaterally declare that it is a French nation, in effect, what we have then is something that very much resembles what Lenny Levitt first took to the polls as his Sovereignty Association option. What is even more disturbing is that at the federal level, the Prime Minister said that he was okay with this, and it would appear that the opposition parties are also okay with that. So what we may end up with then is a method of rewriting the Constitution without respecting the formula that's in place, where 7 of the 10 provinces and with 50% of the population must agree. Anyway, what I see here are 2 freight trains headed for each other. One saying that there's 2 official languages and the other saying from now on, there's only one if you're in Quebec. How are we going to sort that one out? It strikes me as going to be something that will eventually end up in the Supreme Court. If it becomes law, then what we also have to understand here is that in our structure, our democracy, even the government must follow the law. And here, what we're saying in this bill, or we're seeing in this bill, is that there are 2 clear measures that will bypass that obligation on the part of the government to respect its own laws, its own constitutions. But there's another one in there that's scary too. The creation of a ministry that will be responsible for the French language. Now, I think without a great stretch of the imagination, when we read that section, it becomes clear then that there will be a form of policing put in
Language
place.
police.
This, and even to the extent that citizens will be encouraged to snitch on each other.
Well, it's still with l'Office de la langue française. It still exists to a certain, already exists to a certain extent. I mean, I've worked in some supra-municipal situations here in the Eastern Townships, and I remember them coming in and checking signage and checking. It was a municipal organization, but they're checking the phone messages, checking the signage. Oh, the English is too big here. No, the French message has to come before the English. So it still exists, that kind of language police, doesn't it?
It does, but its powers will be increased 10 times forward. I don't want to sound paranoid about this, but will our discussions be monitored? We don't know. It is such a broad, sweeping inclusion in a bill. And these are the 3 elements that right away hit me really, really hard. So then, I kind of I get my breath back. A lot of people are starting to look at the bill. We're getting into it. We're reading it. What are some of the very practical kinds of considerations that could arise? I think there are a number. You can take a very good example of bilingual municipalities.
The magic 50% mark there.
Yes, and that in order to keep the bilingual status. Now, for every people who are living in these communities, why is it important to have communication from your municipality in English? Well, I think there's at least 2 really good reasons. One, it's a measure of respect for the historical contributions of the English communities. Just take a little look at your map. And what you see is Sherbrooke, named after Lord Sherbrooke. Drummondville, named after Lord Drummondville. Victoriaville, named after Queen Victoria. Town after town. To signal that these towns were settled by people who came primarily from the British Isles and the United States, and then were joined by people from the French part of Quebec, which was known at the time as Lower Canada. Historically, I think there is a measure of respect that has to be enshrined in law, and it's not to fool around and say with a magic number. Any municipality that has that status now, whether it's at 23 or 70%, should be frozen, and it should be frozen. I would suggest perhaps for either forever. The way in which there seems to be a measure of democracy is that each municipality can vote within a certain time frame.
I think it's 120 days that they have to voice their wish to maintain that bilingual status.
And they will be able to do that. Big question though. This would hit hard on Lennoxville in particular. Lennoxville is a borough of the municipality of Sherbrooke. It's the Sherbrooke Town Council that gets to decide, not the borough council. There are
just on the margin, aren't they? I think it's Sherbrooke. There's the English as a first language is there at 44% about Lennoxville.
It is one where there are the difference in terms of, I think, receptiveness to this issue. We've already seen in some communities that they're saying, no, we're going French. All it takes is a shift in the town council within 180 days, and there are going to be lots of elections perhaps coming up. Things could change. And so this is not reassuring to the English population, I think. We should look at the CAC. The CAC, when it was in opposition, held the position that we should take a snapshot and freeze it. That should be it. Now we're going to see some tinkering back and forth. Will this promote French, or will it take away English rights? I think we know who's going to be on the receiving end of the shorter stick here.
Well, see that, and that was going to be one of my questions is, how do you strengthen, one side of the ratio without weakening the other side? It's all in the approach, it's all in the openness. I mean, that's a deep-rooted question in itself.
It is one in which Mr. Legault has said, you're going to get to keep all of your rights and access to services and schools. I would remind everyone that this is the same government that used the notwithstanding clause and pushed through Bill 21, meaning that if you were practicing a religion that was central to your identity, that your right to display, even though it may be inconsequential really, would be removed. That the notwithstanding clause said that your rights and freedoms to freedom of expression and religion gone.
And there's also, if I may, there's also the, Legault said that, well, this isn't against English speakers, it's for the French language. English speakers, as you said, will maintain access to services, healthcare, and education, and access to what they have. They'll maintain what they have, but didn't say anything about how we can build on that and how we can, is it going to be a brick wall where we maintain the status quo? But we got to move with the times, and we want to get more services and better serve our English-speaking communities and the other minorities. So that's one of the things I'm concerned about.
Well, this is the same government that is also trying to abolish English school boards. So at the same time that I hear that don't worry, I worry. And in terms of looking then at services, who is going to be qualified to receive English services? There seems to be some discussion and debate around that. I can see where it would be immediately denied to any immigrant, and that is already standing. How are we going to be looking at this if you cannot have appeal to the courts and there is a change, however minor that might be, and we know in different regions, from region to region, there are huge differences in the way in which the English population receives its services.
This has been part one of our discussion with Gerald Cutting from Townshippers Association on Bill 96 and its proposed changes to Quebec's language laws. So it's been pretty important. Now, if you found this video useful, well, please share and like, because it really helps us, spread the news throughout the English-speaking communities of Quebec's Eastern Townships. Oh, and you can also subscribe to Townshippers Association's YouTube channel. Well, thanks a lot for spending a bit of your time with us today. My name is Ed Humphrey. This is About Townshippers, and we'll see you next time.